Hello all and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fascinating encounter from the 2026 Cairns Cup in St. Louis, featuring one of India's greatest chess players, Koneru Humpy, against the rising American talent Alice Lee. Humpy entered the game rated 25-24, while Alice was rated 24-30. Humpy had the rating advantage and plenty of experience at the highest level, but Alice showed tremendous fighting spirit and tactical precision. So let's dive into the game and see exactly how this battle unfolded. Now c4 and e6, knight to c3 and d5, d4 and bishop to b4. Humpy begins with the English opening, but the game quickly transposes into a Queen's Gambit decline structure. Alice develops the bishop to b4, immediately putting pressure on the knight. Now a3 and bishop takes c3 with a check, and b takes c3. Humpy asks the bishop the question with a3 and Alice decides to exchange. After b takes c3, white gets a bishop pair but accepts double pawns on the c file. Knight to f6 and c takes d5 and e takes d5. White exchanges on d5 and black recaptures with the e-pawn. The position is strategically balanced. White has the bishop pair and some central space, while black has a solid structure and active development. Now e3 and kingside castling. Bishop to d3 and c5. Both sides continue developing. Alice strikes in the center with c5, challenging white's pawn structure and preparing to activate the remaining pieces. Now knight to e2 and b6. Kingside castling and bishop to a6. A very logical maneuver from Alice. The bishop comes to a6, targeting white's d3 bishop and putting additional pressure on the dark squares. Now f3 and rook to e8. Knight to g3. Bishop takes d3 and queen takes d3. And knight to c6. Black gives up the bishop for the knight on d3, and after the queen recaptures, Alice develops the knight to c6. The position remains extremely close. A bishop to b2 and h5. This is an interesting moment. Instead of simply continuing development, Alice immediately starts gaining space on the king side. Now rook a to e1 and h4, attacking the knight, and knight goes to f5 and h3. And now the pawn keeps marching. The h-pawn has become a major attacking weapon. White's knight moves around from g3 to f5, while black continues pushing the pawn toward the king. Now knight to g3 and knight to e7. Alice does not rush. The knight comes toward g6, supporting the kingside attack and preparing to coordinate the pieces. Now e4, h takes g2 and king takes g2, and knight to g6. Black finally sacrifices the h-pawn. White's king is forced to capture on g2, but this has also pulled the king away from its natural shelter. Alice's knight arrives on g6. The black pieces are beginning to point toward the white king. Now bishop to c1 and c takes d4 and c takes d4. Now rook to c8. Black activates the rook on the c file. This is important because the position is about to open up and active rooks will become extremely valuable. Now king to h1 and d takes e4, attacking the queen. And f takes e4 and queen to d7. Black removes the central pawn and brings the queen into the attack. White still has chances, but the position is becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Now bishop to g5 and knight to s7, counter-attacking the bishop. Now bishop goes e3 and knight to e5. The d-pawn cannot take the knight, then white will simply lose the queen. The knight heads toward e5, putting pressure on important central squares. Now queen goes d1 and knight to c4. A very strong knight maneuver. The knight jumps to c4 and become extremely active. Ali's pieces are now much more coordinated and white's position is becoming difficult to handle. And now comes the critical phase. Bishop to f4. This is the first significant mistake. The engine but preferred bishop to c1, keeping the position under control. After bishop to f4, black has the opportunity to increase the pressure. Now knight to f6, putting pressure on the e4 square. Interestingly, Alice does not find the strongest continuation. Rook to c6 was more precise, so both players are beginning to feel the pressure. Now d5, Humpy pushes forward with d5, but this is not the best choice. Here again, bishop to c1 was stronger and would have kept white's position more resilient. And now Alice gets a huge opportunity. Now knight takes a3. This looks tempting, but it is actually a serious blunder. Alice grabs the pawn on a3, but she allows white additional tactical possibilities. The valuation swings significantly in white's favor. This was the moment where Humpy had a real chance to turn the game around. Now knight to f5. Humpy does not find the strongest continuation. Again, bishop to c1 was the better move. With the clock becoming a major factor, the precision begins to disappear. Alice, however, continues fighting. Now knight takes e4, another inaccuracy by Alice. The stronger continuation was rook takes e4, which would have maintained much more pressure, but despite these inaccuracies, black still has serious attacking chances. And now comes the decisive blunder of the game, queen to g4. This is the decisive mistake. The engine gives knight takes g7 as the best move. Instead, queen to g4 allows allies to unleash a tactical sequence with knight to f2 check, a powerful knight check. The knight jumps to f2 with check, attacking the king and creating tactical threat. Now rook takes f2. White has little choice but to capture, but now comes the key idea. Queen takes d5 with a check. Black's queen captures on d5 with check. The attack has suddenly become overwhelming. Now rook to f3 and rook takes e1 with a check. This is excellent. Alice eliminates the rook on e1 with check and black's pieces are completely dominating the position. Now king to g2 and rook to c2 check. The second rook enters the attack. Now the white king is being hunted across the board. Now king to h3 and g6 attacking the knight. A calm and useful move. Alice takes away important escape squares and keeps the king trapped. Now bishop to e3. Humpy continues fighting, but knight to h6 offered better practical chances. The clock is now becoming a massive factor for Humpy. She has only around a minute and a half remaining. Now rook to c7. Queen to g3 attacking the rook. If white queen takes the rook on c7, then black will capture the rook on f3 with a check and knight to c4. Alice keeps improving her pieces. Now bishop to g5 and knight to e5 attacking the rook. The knight returns to e5, maintaining control and preparing to finish the attack. Humpy is now down to just seconds. Now rook to f2 and g takes f5 and this is decisive. Black eliminates the important bishop and the position is completely winning. Now bishop to d8 check. Here comes a discovered check. Now knight to g4. Humpy gives one final check, but Alice calmly responds, and with no way to save the position, Humpy resigned the game. What a fighting game from Alice Lee. The opening was relatively balanced, but Alice gradually created pressure with aggressive h5, h4 and h3 pawn advance. But the critical phase came around moves 27 to 30. Alice first missed chances with knight to f6 and then made the serious mistake with knight takes a3, giving Humpy an opportunity, but Humpy could not capitalize. After queen to g4, Alice immediately found knight f2 check, followed by queen takes d5 check and rook takes e1 check, and suddenly the attack became unstoppable. The game is also a great example of how time pressure can completely change the character of the chess game. Both players were spending enormous amounts of time, but Alice managed to maintain her composure when the position became tactically critical. For Alice Lee, this was a fantastic victory against one of the world's most experienced grandmasters, and for Humpy, it was a painful reminder that even after your opponent makes a serious mistake, you still need to find the precise continuation, especially when the clock is ticking. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming chess game analysis. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next game.